Welcome back to another episode of Chatting Cinema. Today we are going to tackle something that's going to ruffle some feathers, but it's also something that we feel very passionate about, and also we're right. The problem with Star Wars.
Yes. Yeah. The
Should I
problem with
say
Star
problems, plural? Yeah.
yeah. The sad state of Star Wars currently.
I think something important to say at the get-go is that this is our opinions on it because
Yeah.
three of us have grown up with Star Wars. It's a franchise near and dear to our hearts. If you're enjoying the things that's happening right now, that's great. This is a podcast that we host and created, and we're going to talk about how we feel about it. So if you disagree, that's totally fine. We're just going to air our grievances right now. So Flynn, why don't you start off?
Yeah, so this is coming off the heels of Book of Boba Fett, which wrapped up pretty recently as of the recording of this particular episode. And man, Star Wars was one thing, and then Disney took over and it was something slightly different. And then Last Jedi happened, and I think post Last Jedi, it's been moving in one specific, very fan service oriented direction. And just to start with Boba Fett, I mean, number one, nobody cared about this show like while it was airing until they brought in the cameos. I did not see any discussion really about episodes 1 through 4 of this series. And I think that it was kind of the creatives behind it seeding that this wasn't a compelling enough character to craft a full narrative out of, because like the show is about Boba Fett, but Boba Fett is missing from a third of it. Like one episode of the series is not even an episode of this series. It's just a Mandalorian episode. So I guess two technically, because episode 6 is really just a Mandalorian episode too, pretty much. So, it's not very compelling, and I don't think they had enough material to stretch out, or vice versa. They felt like they could do it, but they felt like any direction they were going to go that wasn't rooted in, we have to throw this reference, this character in here, and so on, was not going to be popular. And the reaction, I think, proved them right, because nobody talked about it until Din Djarin showed up. And watching that episode, it's like, cool, but that's just reminding me that I like The Mandalorian season 1. And then Luke Skywalker shows up, and, I'll let you guys give your thoughts on Boba Fett as a whole, because Luke Skywalker is going to be its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that was apparent with this show, and Dan Murrell broke it down really well in his end of season analysis video. Check that out. The first 4 episodes with the whole flashbacks and back and forth between what was currently happening. So that post-credit scene of Mando season 2 is modern. So everything that's happening that on mixed in with the flashbacks. If they thought the story with the Tusken Raiders was interesting enough, it should have just been the first episode of the show instead of having to bounce back and forth and make a really confusing narrative. Because in Dan's video, he breaks down like the screen time of flashback to modern, and it is all over the place. It's so random. And in the 3rd episode, when the flashback is most important, it's the episode that features the least amount of flashbacks. It's like, why bounce back and forth between those two? Because like I remember watching the premiere, and like when we had to watch that terrible Goro Mortal Kombat-esque fight,
I forgot
I was
about
just
him.
like, I'm thinking like they thought this was worth keeping. Like,
Yeah.
if like I like the idea of exploring the Tusken Raiders as a more complex group of people, not just brutal sand people that club people in the head and scream weird noises. Like I like how in the first episode of Mando season 2, we see another side of them, because Din, gotta love Din, shows that other side and he just interacts with them. And I was like, okay, I'm not opposed to this with Boba Fett, because Boba Fett's kind of like a misplaced person too. And like in a way, it made a lot of sense that he would kind of fit in with them, where he never had a place of his own either. But the way they presented it and how it kept going back and forth, like it just felt off. And that's not even my main issue with the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, like the speeder bike gang felt like the least Star Wars thing Star Wars has ever put out. Just like the really silly colors and like people were comparing it to Power Rangers as an insult, and as a diehard Power Rangers fan, I was insulted. But like there were so many moments in the show that I think Flynn said it first after the premiere, it felt like a fan film.
Yeah.
And those first 4 episodes, I didn't watch them until I heard episode 5 was a Mandalorian episode. I'd watched the premiere, but I didn't watch 2, 3, or 4 because I wasn't really into it. And I try to not spend time on things I'm not super into. And after hearing that episodes 5 and 6 became Mandalorian episodes, I'm like, all right, I guess I got to watch this. And it just, there was no spark. There was no exciting factor to it. And I want to love Star Wars. I've never gone into a Star Wars project thinking I want to hate this. And I just didn't enjoy this. And it's like, all right, whatever. I mean, and that we're not even touching on what happens in 5, 6, and 7. Like I'm really sticking to 1 through 4 right now. And
Yeah.
it's just interesting to see because like you said, Flynn, what Marvel show hadn't been trending every release day so far? Like every single one, every release day, it was the topic. And WandaVision still trends here and there. Like the longevity of those shows is really showing and it's awesome. But then this show happens and no one was talking about it until Din showed up. Like, but then everyone has always wanted a Boba Fett show or a Boba Fett movie or a spin-off or whatever. And it's just interesting to see that like this didn't do what Star Wars thought it was going to do.
I wanted to hit on just like the title itself. The Book of Boba Fett is a big title in and of itself. And like you said, Flynn, to only have your main character, the titular role in the first 3 episodes. I mean, what do we get? We get maybe a little bit of a backstory, more.
Yeah.
I just, something I said to you guys off camera after the first episode, or maybe the second, was that coming off the heels of Marvel's What If, this Boba Fett story, what if Boba Fett survived, probably would have fit a little bit better in like a 40-minute animated episode of What If Star Wars. And I think I would have been into that.
Yeah.
But to stretch it over 6 hours and then to have, again, all of these cameos, unnecessary, like the conflict on Mos Espa itself could have been solved by Boba Fett and Fennec Shand.
Yes.
You know, could have been handled by them. And I probably would have preferred to see that and maybe wrap it up in like 4 chapters of the Book of Boba Fett, you know?
Right.
But yeah, to have 7 and only 4 of them feature Boba, like that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple things before we get into like the cameo aspects of Boba Fett that I want to touch on that I think that you guys have alluded to in what you've talked about. The interesting thing about how this show is structured is if you really want to dive deep into a character study in Boba Fett, why did we not have a full season of just him escaping the Sarlacc pit and living in the Tusken Raider commune? Like that could have been its own like 4 or 5 episode season if it was really that important to keep cutting away from the present day action. And you could have ended it with, you know, the Tusken camp getting invaded and all of those Tusken Raiders being slaughtered. And then, you know, you could have had the second season be Boba thinking that it's a speeder bike gang and he finds out halfway through it's the Pike Syndicate. You know, like it feels like rushing through storytelling to get to things that like the creatives behind it are deeming interesting. And it's just not. Like it's making everything a mess. You're not doing like one specific story thread well. You're doing multiple story threads in a mediocre way. The second thing I wanted to talk about is like, as far as stuff like the mod gang goes and things like that, I don't mind them at all. But something that this show like kept feeling to me was cheap. And there hasn't been any other like Disney Plus big live action series that has felt cheap to me. Like certainly not The Mandalorian for all the problems I have with season 2. And again, we'll get into that, but it never feels cheap. It never looks bad, but like the mod gang looks cheap. Like those robotic enhancements they have look terrible. And it doesn't fit in the show when you have something like Boba Fett's armor, which, you know, you have a childhood attachment to, probably if you're watching as an older person, or even if you're, you know, a kid, you see Boba Fett's armor everywhere and like merchandising and promotional materials. And then you have Din Djarin's armor that has been, you know, has quickly become iconic and representative of Star Wars. And you see the mod gang like next to them, it looks dreadful. Like they look atrocious. Like, again, I don't have a problem with like the concept of them, and in fact I prefer that, like trying new things with original characters and trying to make them stick, but they just look really bad. And I think that that's something that stretches into even existing characters. Like I think the Gamorrean guards look cheap too. And I think that, you know, some of the alien designs in bars and in, you know, Mos Espa and all of this, like they look cheap too. Like I don't think that a lot of care is being put into this. It feels more slapdash to me. And I think that that extends to the cameos and what they're doing. So if you guys don't mind, I guess we can jump into that right now, because, you know, obviously there's spoilers for the show. We know we know that as we're talking about all this. But Luke Skywalker pops up in episode 6, and I hated it. I really despised it. And I said off camera that, you know, it really depressed me and it really made me upset. And I could not finish episode 6 in one sitting. And I know that sounds dramatic and over the top, but it's true, because I just think that, again, no care was given to that. There's no humanity there. There's no life in that performance. You can't even really call it a performance. Like they CG grafted Mark Hamill's face into a different actor. And look, I don't care what people say. It looks better than the Mandalorian season 2 finale, but I still don't think it looks good. And that could just be like the uncanny valley thing of like knowing in my head that that's clearly not Mark Hamill, and you know, it's just like an automatic thing that it looks weird, but it still doesn't look good to me. And that's something that I've never really felt in like when Marvel does it, when they have like de-aging of like Michael Douglas and Ant-Man, or, you know, a far more extensive version of it of Sam Jackson and Captain Marvel. I've never felt that lifelessness. And, you know, you can even debate the dubious ethics of that, like de-aging those characters. But at least when it comes to that, those actors are playing them, doing every motion, voicing every line, you know, delivering every piece of dialogue. It's just digitally, you know, changing their face up. And Star Wars has not done it right yet. It looks dreadful in Rogue One. Tarkin and Leia look so inhuman, and it looks terrible in Mandalorian season 2. And I think it looks better in Book of Boba Fett, but it looks bad. It doesn't look good. And, you know, for a character like Luke, that Luke is not a prequel Jedi, right? Like he is not the prequel era, like stoic and, you know, muted. He's a very emotional character. And that's the appeal of Luke to me in the original trilogy, is doing his own thing. Like he blows off Yoda and Obi-Wan to go help his friends in Empire, and he's right to do so. And that like almost overly emotional character of Luke Skywalker is just like nowhere to be found. Like I don't understand. I get if you don't like the character beats of Last Jedi, but I don't understand how you can't see Luke Skywalker in that, but you can see him in this like posable action figure portrayal that we get in Boba Fett.
I mean, going off of that, it's like you look at the end of Return of the Jedi, and you figure that this Luke Skywalker isn't far off from that.
Right.
And again, that, like you said, the performance feels so lifeless. And I think when I was watching it, I even said to you guys, you know, in our group chat, I was like, I don't think I like Luke Skywalker anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that had less to do, I mean, it has a lot to do with the writing, but it had less to do with that and more to do with the performance. And that is that it wasn't one. And you know, it's funny, you said that, you know, he looks better than he did at the end of The Mandalorian season 2. And I agree with that in the face.
Right.
But when he starts running and jumping and swinging his lightsaber around, I'm like, I feel like uncomfortable almost like watching this. And I I didn't want Grogu to be with this dude because he's not even like a dude.
Yeah.
It was weird.
I think the biggest crime, and like I hate sounding dramatic, but it's just true, is that Mark Hamill is one of the most wonderful voice actors in the world. His post Star Wars career has shown his incredible range with his voice. And you're telling me that you couldn't just edit his dialogue slightly to make him sound a bit higher pitched and younger? You had to use a computer program where you use Star Wars audiobooks from the 80s to get the exact Mark Hamill of that era voice. Like there's plenty of Star Wars fans who think their hero is back and they're ecstatic and it's great. And you know what? I'm glad you're enjoying it. But at the end of the day, Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and the entire original cast are why we care about this franchise so much. If Mark Hamill doesn't play Luke, I don't know if we care about it nearly as much. Because like you said, Flynn, he's an incredibly emotional character. And when Obi-Wan and Yoda, we meet them in the original trilogy, this is them after Order 66. This is them after seeing the fall of the Jedi. And the whole point of Luke starting a new Jedi Order is to then build upon where the Jedi originally messed up. And just about everything Luke did in that episode was the old Jedi way or dumb. And like people are like, oh, well, he has to make a mistake when he gets to Ben. Ben is when he makes the mistake. Like, yeah, he's not perfect and he's not going to crank out quality Jedi right away, but like Ben is supposed to be his first great mistake. And you're telling me that he made Grogu pick between something that he had a right to in the armor from Din or a lightsaber that wasn't his own. And like now people are spawning theories saying, oh, well, Yoda's lightsaber was destroyed in a comic book about Order 66. So that means the Ahsoka theory is true and that the sequels aren't canon. Why do you waste so much time of your day thinking about how the sequels can get erased? Like,
well, you know what?
if they're not movies that you like, that's fine. But
Yeah.
move on. There's still 6 movies that I would think you love, or at least 3, because you definitely like the prequels.
And you know what? Luke had a satisfying and compelling arc in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
That makes sense for his character. And it was a great send-off for his character. And even again, seeing him in Rise of Skywalker was fine. But like to bring him back again and to go back to this era of Star Wars, one that we largely left behind with Return of the Jedi and we're fine with, because again, another compelling arc for the characters, all of them, not just Luke, but Leia, Han, and to bring him back and like to do this with it.
Yeah.
You know, and again, something that I think I mentioned right before we started recording was like, you know, what's he going to do now that he's not training Grogu? What was the point of bringing him into this just to undo what you did at the end of The Mandalorian season 2? And it goes to show just how messy even this is going. You know, everyone likes to complain that the sequel trilogy didn't have a straightforward path. But I feel like the same thing is happening here with the shows. And it's like,
I think it's happening.
Why do we love it?
Yeah.
Get it.
You are 100% right, Gianni. And that's the thing. I was going to say something similar in that, you know, Luke, as you talk about with when he messes up and buys into the Jedi dogma, that is supposed to be the mistake that he makes that leads to where he is, where we meet back up with him in Last Jedi. And doing stuff like this, Gianni, like you're saying, it makes it so messy because you're not thinking, like, it doesn't feel like anybody's thinking beyond the, well, we're going to have Luke Skywalker pop up and everybody's going to be super excited. Like, yeah, great. Now what? Then what? Right? Because like exactly like you're saying, like now Grogu's gone. So what? And this is another problem I have with another big cameo, which is Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka, but Ahsoka is like a quote unquote Jedi in the vein of Rey and in the vein of original trilogy Luke Skywalker that doesn't buy into this dogmatic notion of what it means to be a Jedi and knows that you can tap into the living force without, you know, following a strict religion. And it doesn't make any sense to me to connect these characters, because if Luke were to say, hey, I'm training Grogu, I'm going to do it in the prequel era way, why would Ahsoka Tano let him do that? Ahsoka that was kicked out of the order for something she didn't do. And then when they realized their mistake, they were like, I mean, you could go, oh, what are we going to do. Like,
Our bad.
it doesn't make any sense for Ahsoka to follow this path. Literally, the most iconic line of dialogue for Ahsoka Tano is, "I am no Jedi." Like, how is she just going to sit back? And I get, she says to Din, like, "Oh, I don't interfere with other people's path. I let them make their own choices." You're telling me that this kid shows up in Luke's care and she sees that happen and she's not going to be like, "Oh, okay, let me step in here." I don't care how like strong you are in your convictions that you're not going to interfere with somebody else's path. You're going to say something. And these are the types of problems that come up when you're just like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if Ahsoka met Luke? Oh, she can say he's like his father." Like, Luke is nothing like Anakin.
And also, that would be a red flag. That would be a major red flag.
Nothing like him. It's crazy to me, especially because Grogu, like, the way, I don't think they've ever like talked about it in canon at this point after meeting Grogu, but like the way I've looked at the age of his species, because we know that Yoda is around 900 when he dies, and we know that Grogu is 50 and he's a baby. So I look at Grogu like he's like 5 years old. And I think that, like, every 100 years is like 10 years for somebody of Yoda's species and Grogu's species. So Yoda would be technically around 90 when he died. That makes sense to me in my head. That's the math that checks out. So this 5-year-old kid is like running around with this dude that's just dicking around with his lightsaber around these bamboo trees, and Ahsoka Tano isn't going to be like, "Oh, ooh, yeah, you talked to Yoda and Obi-Wan, got it, and they told you should do this." No. Like, we shouldn't. Like, she should be calling Din immediately and being like, "You got to come pick up this kid. Like, this guy's going to get him killed."
That's a great point, because watching him train and getting shot with the training droid, I was like,
like,
are we gonna kill Grogu?
He's a baby. Like, he's so young. Like, you can't have it both ways, where you want him to be like, you want to be able to sell every cute Funko Pop variation of Grogu with every single thing possible in his hands. Oh, he's got the cup, he's got the frog, he's got the macaroon candy, whatever. Like, you can't. He's like puking. He's like puking on his robes. Like, this kid is gonna hold a lightsaber? Like, no, don't do that. This is abuse.
I think it would fit in his hands. Like,
that's what I thought too.
The length of the hilt is like the height of him.
When Luke held it up, I was like, "There's no way." Like, he's just saying you can have this like 15 years from now, right? Yeah. Like, there's no way he's gonna give this kid this lightsaber.
That's like what's his name from Willy Wonka. "Dad, can I have a gun?" "Not until you're 12, son."
Yeah. Like TV Grogu.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all just like, I understand that there's a very vocal portion of the fan base that really hates the direction Last Jedi went in, and I get it, but like, Last Jedi to me is what I want to see in like legacy sequels. Like, if you're going to bring back these characters that we're already satisfied with the conclusions of, because Return of the Jedi, I have my issues with Return of the Jedi, but it's got a perfect ending. Like, the despecialized edition. I don't like flying above Naboo, but whatever. It's got a perfect ending, and Sebastian Shaw is a Force ghost and not Hayden Christensen. Anyway, perfect ending. So if you're going to bring back Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia Organa, fucking do something with them. Like, do something interesting with them that we haven't seen before. I've seen people say, and I sent this in our group chat, I've seen people say, "Thank goodness for Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, because we finally got Luke Skywalker in a cool lightsaber scene." Are you joking? Have you watched the original trilogy? Like, I don't care about Luke slaughtering droids. Like, the first time we meet Luke, we see him like having compassion for droids. Like, he's just having conversations with 3PO and R2. Like, it gets a little messy when you have like these Empire droids that Luke is just cutting through, when you want to humanize droids in other series, especially when you have something like Rogue One, where you see in K2SO, you can reprogram Empire technology droids. Like, could Luke have not just shut them all off with the Force and like had them help build the Jedi Temple? Like, he's really just got to cut through them like this. I think that people want the wrong things out of Star Wars. And I think that a big part of the reason why, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't say wrong because again, it's all opinion based, but I think a big part of the reason that a lot of fans want Star Wars to go in this direction is because George Lucas has a lot of deficiencies as a writer and director. And the original trilogy is an entirely collaborative effort. Like you can watch hours and hours worth of documentaries and read hundreds of pages worth of books that explain to you what George's vision was and how other people came in to edit that vision, right? Because George Lucas is a genius and he's a brilliant storyteller, but Star Wars wouldn't be what it was if his wife wasn't in the editing bay in the original film. And, you know, Lucas only directs the first film. You have Irvin Kershner come in for Empire, and you have Lawrence Kasdan working on the script, and then you have Richard Marquand for Return of the Jedi. But then the prequels, it's funny because I think in a kind of meta way, it mirrors what Rian Johnson does with Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi. But with the prequels, Star Wars is the biggest global phenomenon of all time when the work sets forth in making those movies. So nobody's going to question nobody's going to question George Lucas when he's making these films. Like nobody's going to say, "Oh, George, I don't know." Nobody's going to question his opinions about Star Wars. And I've brought this up before. I don't know about on the show, but there's behind the scenes footage of Phantom Menace when Steven Spielberg visited the set, and they were setting up the battle on Naboo in the third act of Phantom Menace, and Lucas is like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great." And Spielberg is like, "Yeah, it's gonna be great." And I'm like, "Steve, you know it's not gonna be great. Look around you. Look at what's happening, Steven. Ridiculous." So again, like Star Wars should be collaborative, and you know that's the big point I'm trying to make is Lucas's deficiencies were on full display in the prequels, but because people grew up with them and kind of don't have a background in like film and don't watch a ton of movies, but know they love the prequels, they think that they're perfect the way they are. And I'm not saying that you can't love them. I probably watch them like at least 3 times a year, but there's serious writing problems, there's serious structural problems. And I think that the way good and evil is presented as a binary in the original trilogy, with gray being in the middle of like how Luke redeems Darth Vader, because of that inherent structure, you can't apply that to the prequels with the kind of complex story that Lucas was trying to tell there with the fall of the Jedi, where you have to show like the Jedi were wrong about a lot, but the Sith aren't good either. I think that people are just like, prequel Jedi are good. And because of that shakeup of perception, now they just want any Jedi to be a prequel Jedi. And it's like, I don't want that at all. I want to move on from this prequel era stuff where we can get characters like Rey that are less interested in dogma and are more operating in the middle, more like a gray Jedi type thing. Like, I thought that's why we liked Ahsoka, but I guess not. I guess we just like Ahsoka because we saw her in a cartoon and we just want to see her again. I guess that's the thing.
I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, and he is kind of with us for the most part about how we feel about Book of Boba Fett and that stuff. And he said one of his favorite parts about the sequel trilogy was that we finally explored the aspects of the Force that didn't involve the Jedi and the Sith, because Snoke is not a Sith. Kylo Ren is not a Sith. They're dark side users. They resemble the Sith because for toy sales, you have to make Kylo Ren's suit look like Darth Vader somehow.
Sure.
But like Kylo Ren's not a Sith Lord. Snoke is not a Sith Lord. And Snoke mentions how he has another apprentice. We never went anywhere with that. But like there's other things. And then Rey, like Luke is like, don't be a Jedi. Like they did bad. They messed up. There is the Force was like the Jedi and the Sith are religions worshiping the Force in the ways they see fit. And Star Wars fans think the only way to be a Force user is to be a Jedi or a Sith. And moving forward, exploring new areas of this gigantic galaxy, I would think there are other people who figured out how to use the Force and aren't a Jedi or aren't a Sith. And why do we always have to go back to that same outdated idea of a Jedi that was proven? Like, listen, I don't like I love Star Wars and I watch prequels all the time. They're not my favorites. And they portray the downfall of the Jedi. That's fine. I think that the overall story arc was there, just individual beats and some scenes don't really hit. But like, why do we constantly have to keep going back? One of my biggest gripes with Book of Boba Fett is that it's on Tatooine. Tatooine is tired. We have been there too much. We have seen too much. When you watch episode 4, it is such a mysterious, vast planet. But now I can't help but get every legacy media image out of my head where we just constantly keep going back. Like, we don't need to. It does not matter. This is supposed to be a universe far, far away and like huge. And like, why haven't we gone to the Outer Rim? You constantly talk about the Outer Rim and the unknown regions, but we're back on Tatooine again. It's like there's so much to do with Star Wars, and all they do is go back. And yes, it's fun to see characters again. And I think at times it works because Cad Bane being there makes sense. Like, Cad Bane's a bounty hunter. He had a story with Boba Fett in the Clone Wars that was kind of unresolved. It was one of those unanimated episodes. And that one did make sense. I didn't really care for it. And like, I think Cad Bane's a good character in the Clone Wars, but it's like, all right, cameo. Like, it could have been a new character. It could have been somebody from the Pikes. But no, they had to bring back somebody for clicks and stuff because, you know, the good, bad, and the ugly. Got to reference it. But I just think that one of my biggest issues with like what the Book of Boba Fett has done to Star Wars is that everyone is counting the amount of times they recognize something in each episode. Why was a Naboo starfighter casually on Tatooine and every original part it needed on Tatooine? Like, I'm sorry, it's a beautiful ship. I love the design. And also Grogu like begging to go faster is freaking adorable. Like him being in the astromech slot. I'm not saying I dislike it. It's just, why did you do that? Because the Razor Crest we hadn't seen before, and now it's become one of the most popular Star Wars ships by far. Before Mando season 1, we had never seen or heard of a Razor Crest. Like 2019 was the first time Razor Crest was ever seen. And 2.5 years later, it's one of the most popular Star Wars ships. Make a new toy and people will love it. Like, you don't need to constantly keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I think that's just the theme of what Star Wars is heading towards, is like, hey, remember this guy, remember this place, remember this ship, remember this weapon. And I mean, people are going to like it because they like that kind of stuff. I personally like things that challenge you more and make you think about the characters you thought you knew, or introduce new characters and concepts that you don't know. And it's just kind of like, it was rough to watch Book of Boba Fett because there wasn't much being said. It was 40 minutes to hour-long episodes, and I don't know what the point of it was at the end of it. Like, Boba literally kills Cad. I thought he wasn't a killer anymore. Like, what? Like, was it a neat fight scene? Sure. And Gianni and I both said after watching episode 7, that was probably our favorite of the show, just because there was a lot of fun Star Wars moments in it. But like, what was the point of this project? What was the point of this story? Because we have the sequel trilogy, and now we just keep going back to this 30-year gap between 6 and 7. Why are we living here so much? What is so important that we need to constantly make something happening here? Because half the projects that are coming out are either between 3 and 4, because they'll never move on from that, or between 6 and 7. And I'm like, but what's the point? Why? Like, at the end of the day, what is the purpose of watching this, and what does it further for the Star Wars franchise? And I feel like Book of Boba Fett furthers clicks and cameos, and that's nostalgia, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. You know, we talk a lot about our grievances with this, and I think like we hit a lot on the problems we have with it. And so maybe we should talk a little bit about what we think a solution can be to all of this. And I don't think there's necessarily an easy answer, because clearly they're going to continue going in the direction that they want to go in.
Right.
But, you know, if there was sort of an easy fix, I would say it's to not do this. It's to continue to expand the universe of Star Wars, the universe, not Tatooine. Let's not expand Tatooine.
Right.
Let's not expand on, you know, Luke Skywalker. Let's not expand on Ahsoka Tano. Unless, of course, we're gonna see an Ahsoka Tano that stays true to her character in the Clone Wars.
Sure. Yeah,
What's
exactly.
going on? You know?
Yeah.
And like, and if you watch Rebels, there's a clear storyline to be done with Ahsoka. So like, if Ahsoka comes back to resolve that, sure. I thought we called it the Skywalker Saga because we were done with the Skywalkers.
Well,
Like,
and that's the Skywalker Saga is episodes 1 through 9. So I don't understand. Like, we look at Rogue One and Solo, no matter your feelings on either of those films, as separate from the Skywalker Saga. So like, why are we rooting everything else in the Skywalker Saga? Like, the Skywalker Saga should be its own thing, and then we should be able to get into the nitty gritty of everything else outside of it. And yeah, Gianni, like you said, like, this direction that they're going in, it feels kind of like the norm. I feel like there's a very clear dividing line on the continued backlash to The Last Jedi, and in the direction they've gone with everything since, with how the reception to that film affected the Rise of Skywalker. And, they try to do something different with one integral character, which I think completely tracks with everything we know about Luke. Like, maybe I'm not trying to sound like a dick, but maybe you just need to think about it a little bit deeper if you don't think that Last Jedi is consistent with Luke. I'm sorry. But ever since then, now we only get legacy characters preserved in amber. We only get them exactly as they were before. And if there's even one thing different, like, we're not going to do that. We can't have Luke do anything other than what we know about him before. But in the same vein, they are changing these characters, and they're all like, Ahsoka is different because they're just trying to like put a square peg into a circle hole. Like, it doesn't fit. And yeah, I wrote an essay after Mandalorian season 2 ended where I thought, destroying the Razor Crest in season 2 and then flying away on the fire spray on Boba Fett's ship, that felt symbolic to me. Like, it felt like this is now the direction of Star Wars. We can't have new things. And like, I mean, even the changes they make, like now X-Wings are cop cars. Like, how does that track if you think about Star Wars for even a second? Like, the symbol ship, the flagship transport of the guerrilla rebellion that fought against the Empire are now police cars.
I can't stand those scenes.
I don't know about that personally. So I hate that. But yeah, it feels like we're headed in this one direction. And I think that it's showing a severe, and I love Kathy Kennedy, and I think that Disney Star Wars has done a lot of good, but I think that giving into fandom demand is showing a severe lack of foresight. Okay. Because if you completely doubled down on the prequels when they were coming out, like, it wouldn't have been popular, because the reason all this prequel era stuff and the reason we have to keep dipping into this and have to have Din say wizard when he takes the Naboo starfighter out, which, side note, tangent, I think it's sweet. Like, I think it's a cool design for a ship, and I think that the Fast and Furious like garage scene where they were like making the modifications, I think it's fun. I don't understand how that can be a bounty hunter ship. Like, I don't know what Din's gonna do for work, because you can't, like,
store someone in there.
Yeah, put somebody in carbon freeze in, like, I don't know if he's gonna like haul it like flying behind him. I don't know. But I think it's showing a severe lack of foresight, because, like I said, if you double down on prequel stuff when the prequels were coming out, it wouldn't be popular. The reason prequel era stuff is popular now is because an entire generation of kids grew up with it as their Star Wars. Ewan McGregor just said this in an interview where he said, a whole group of people grew up with it as their Star Wars, and that's why they're attached to it. They imprinted onto it. And, for whatever, you're not thinking about film critically as a kid. So, whatever you see that's cool, that's where you're going to attach to, which is fine. But the reason I say that they're showing a severe lack of foresight is that is happening right now with an entire generation of children with the sequel trilogy. Like, you have fans of Star Wars that are fans now. I don't know if they're fans anymore, but they were fans because of the sequel trilogy, because they saw themselves in Rey or Finn or Poe or Ben. Like, these new characters actually expanded the world, I think, in 7 and in 8 in an organic way, where they used legacy characters for a reason to kind of ground the new characters, but the new characters were the ones driving the narrative. And you're just abandoning them for what? Like, there's a whole, group of, like, generation of girls that dress up as Rey for Halloween, or, when they go to Galaxy's Edge, and they just get abandoned. Like, I think that my solution in this roundabout way is, if we need to do this, if we need to placate this section of the fan base where all they want to see is amber preserved action figure versions of the characters they like, you need to do both as Disney. Like, if you're going to crank out all these shows and do it in a way, like, try and use the MCU formula, I don't personally think that's ever going to work for Star Wars. I think Star Wars should be a little bit more special than that. I think we should be more selective with what we're doing as far as projects for Star Wars go. But if this is the direction we're headed, you need to also, like, give us a different perspective on this. Like, if we're going to do a Book of Boba Fett, can we have a Rose Tico Resistance show that takes place between 8 and 9? Like, can we do that? Can we see, I don't know if Daisy or John or Oscar will ever want to come back to Star Wars based on how they were treated, and certainly not Kelly Marie Tran. Like, if she'd even be interested, again, because of the reception, the backlash, and the personal attacks those artists got. But I just think that if we actually want to grow this franchise at all, you need to be doing both. If you insist on doing one, you have to give other sections of the fan base the other, because, I feel stupid, like, going to bat for Disney Star Wars and saying, like, no, everybody that's attacking them is just, angry that they're not getting what they want, just for the ones that were angry who didn't get what they want to get everything now. Like, what Star Wars is being made for me? Mandalorian season 2 isn't made for me. So I think that, that's one way, like, doing both. And I think that the other thing that they should try and do is really limit the cameos to make the cameos feel more significant, right? Because in one episode of Boba Fett, you get the return of Cobb Vanth, and then Luke and R2, and also Ahsoka, and Din's in it as well, and then Cad Bane. Like, if Cad Bane just showed up in the finale of Boba Fett, that's cool with me, and I'd probably be a lot more excited about it. And it's the same thing in Mandalorian season 2. Well, if it's just Bo-Katan that shows up, and then you do the finale kind of similarly, but this insular group that we've developed over season 2 takes care of Moff Gideon and the Dark Troopers, rather than having Luke Skywalker just show up and end the whole thing in 5 minutes. I think that works not only in a way of limiting these cameos so it's not nostalgia based, but it's just a more organic form of storytelling. Like, you can't really introduce a new character, like, in the finale and be like, oh, well, he saved the day. Well, if you're developing a television show where you're investing in the main characters, you don't really want a cameo character to be the one that fixes everything at the end of the day, right? Like, the best part, one of the best parts of that finale episode to me of Mando season 2 is Mando's fight with Moff Gideon, because it's just characters that we've been developing since season 1 of The Mandalorian. And then Din's goodbye with Grogu, I think, is emotional. But again, Gianni, you touched on this, where it's like, what was the point of even doing this after we know what happens in Book of Boba Fett? Like, I think it's very emotional because Pedro Pascal is a fantastic actor. But at the end of the day, you're going to rewatch it and it's going to be like, well, what? Because we know Grogu spent like a week in the bamboo forest with Luke, and then he was like, yeah, this ain't for me, I'm dipping. So it, like you said, Gianni, it's not easy to think of what a solution will be with this. And also, like you said, they seem to be set in going in one direction. But I think that if they continue doing this, it's going to crash and burn in like, a really significant way. And by then it'll be too late to like do a couple year fix to reestablish the brand, because this is like no new fans are being welcomed in by this. You have to have all this knowledge to even get excited about any of this. So it's really not expanding the fan base in any way. I think it's shrinking it. And I think that, that's going to be a bigger deal down the line, because Twitter engagement does not equal viewership. And Boba Fett's viewership has not been on the level of what we've gotten from the MCU shows, which are on the same platform as Boba Fett and came before. So all those new subscribers are still on the platform. I haven't seen the numbers. I don't even know what they compare to as far as Mandalorian goes. But Luke, like you touched on as well, like we've talked about, those Marvel shows, every episode that drops, you have people talking about them that whole day and probably the next couple days too. And that never happened with Boba Fett. And if any critics want to say, well, that's just because it's Marvel and it's just because Marvel is like the big thing now, it happens with Euphoria too. Like everybody is talking about Euphoria from the minute it premieres until the end of the day on Monday. So, if you're giving people good storytelling and trying to grow that brand, I think that that's how people will respond. And, like it or not, Last Jedi has been talked about since it got released. So
Last Jedi has trended more this year than Book of Boba Fett did.
Yeah, for real. Like, absolutely. So I don't know. I think that really it's kind of sad and pretty depressing. And I hope that, changes are made and that these dissenting voices are taken seriously. But because it's not loud, whiny, obnoxious man-child banging on the table saying, give me what I want or I'm done, I don't know how effective it's going to be, because clearly that's the internet dissent that gets things done now. So those are my closing thoughts on the problem with Star Wars and hopefully the fixes that I would like to see applied in the near future.
My closing thought is that Star Wars has always appealed to me because of the vastness and the mysteriousness of the universe, where the cameos and the little tie-ins felt earned and they felt like in place with the story that was being told. And I think there's a universe where both fan bases are happy. I think there's a universe where characters come back, but in smart, tasteful ways where they are gracefully aged. Because, spoiler if you haven't seen it, Spider-Man No Way Home literally plucked Toby and Andrew out of there years later. We haven't seen these guys as Spider-Man. Toby in almost 15 years, Andrew in like 8 years. And they did not feel like new people. They didn't feel like messed up. They felt like themselves, but time had moved on. We had seen pain in Andrew's eyes because Andrew Spider-Man had went through the loss of Gwen Stacy. And you're telling me that Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi isn't the same thing? Because I think it's the same exact thing. And I think Star Wars needs to learn. It's like how like Lord and Miller are making a lot of kids movies, but they're making them incredibly smart. You need to give these kids more credit. They can understand more complex stories.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think Star Wars fans aren't often challenged when watching media because they don't see a ton of movies. And I'm not saying you have to be a cinephile. Flynn and I were just talking about how being a cinephile is a disease. Thank you, Benny Safdie. But like, you don't have to watch a ton of movies every year. You don't have to watch a ton of TV every year, but the stuff you're watching, you should expect it, like greatness out of it. You should expect it to be fun. It should be new. It should be fresh. You don't want the same thing every time. And I think if they continue this trend for the next 5, 10, 15 years, even they're going to grow tired of it, where it's like, oh, we already saw this person again. We don't want to see them again. And they're going to be clamoring for a new character, but not knowing if they want a new character. And like at one point in time, Rex wasn't a thing. No one knew who Rex was. Now Rex is one of the most beloved Star Wars characters. At one point in time, Ahsoka was the most hated Star Wars character. Like after that movie came out in theaters in 2008, people were like, it's stupid that Anakin has a Padawan. It's stupid that she's a girl. It's stupid that she has orange skin. And it's like, you're getting angry.
What the hell is Snips?
Yeah, like they were so mad. And I remember watching the premiere of the Clone Wars on Cartoon Network that same year being like, this was cool, like enjoying it. And I think Star Wars needs to understand that its fan base is smarter than it gives it credit for. And we want more. And like the High Republic, I've heard nothing but good things so far about the books. I have the first book and I need to read it. I think that's one of the clear solutions, is that we completely ignore this era for like 5 years and
Yep.
just make High Republic shows, movies, books, because back then the literal only tie is the religion of Jedi and Sith and Yoda. And I feel like that is a great avenue for them to be like, hey, if you like Star Wars, this is going to be Star Wars content, but a different time period, 300 years ago. And then even like Old Republic, like I know they all want Old Republic stuff. All right, well, I don't want just Old Republic novels translated from Legends into this. If we're going to go Old Republic, let's do new stories that we don't know about. Or crazy thought, we do stuff after 9. God forbid.
Yep.
Like we introduce a slew of wonderful new characters and we leave the galaxy in arguably the happiest place it's ever been. Like after episode 9, it is the most peaceful this galaxy has ever been. Why don't we live in that for a couple of years and enjoy that? Because we've seen these characters go through hell. And like literally Oscar Isaac's tired, Palpatine's back. Like we're sick of it. Like do something new, do something fresh. This franchise has lasted this long because of how inclusive and how welcoming it's been. And I thought Mandalorian season 1 was fantastic with how you didn't need to watch 9 movies to understand this story. There's references you would get, but the idea of the Mandalorian season 1, you needed limited Star Wars knowledge to watch. And many people jumped on Star Wars because of that show. And then they watched the movies. If you tried to tell someone to watch the Book of Boba Fett or Mando season 2, they would be like, this sucked. Who are all those people? Like, and there was a lot of cameos in Mando season 2 that I liked because I thought they made more sense thematically than they were doing them in Book of Boba Fett. Like Bo-Katan showing up is sick. But if you show somebody who's never watched the Clone Wars that, like, I'm going to say, oh, you have to watch 7 seasons of an animated show and 3 prequel movies just to get why she's there. Like, that does not work. That's not going to work. And like Flynn said, a lot of young Star Wars fans are going to move on to other franchises because there's plenty of great options out there. And it's not saying you can't like more than one, because looking at all of our rooms, we have our love of franchises plastered everywhere, as we should, because, you consume the things you love. But Star Wars is kind of dwindling right now, where it's just like they're catering to a very loud minority group. And for what reason? What do they get out of it? Because they were watching episode 7, 8, and 9 anyways. They went and saw it in theaters, even though they said it was sacrilegious. Like, meanwhile, the 3 of us didn't even want to watch Book of Boba Fett. We gave it a chance because we want to give Star Wars a chance. And I mean, Flynn and I watched it in the last week just because we were catching up. Like, I was okay with not watching it. I didn't watch The Bad Batch. And I'm not saying if you like The Bad Batch, that's dumb. Like, that's fine. Enjoy The Bad Batch. That's great. But like, there's always going to be something new for somebody, and it's not always for you. And Rey is one of the best Star Wars characters. I don't care what you say. Like, because it's your opinion. She can be the worst Mary Sue ever. But overall, and when you look at Star Wars, her arc from 7 to 9, it's one of the best ones they did. One of the best ones they pulled off. And I think people are so stuck on what they want. And I know the 3 of us are talking about what we want out of Star Wars, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of people think the way we do, not saying that's right, but saying there's more than one way to think, and feels like Star Wars is only thinking one way right now. And it's how can we circle back to get people to stay interested? Because like, I mean, how much, I don't think I would have watched Book of Boba Fett if Din didn't show up in it, Like, that's just probably true, because like I watched the first episode and wasn't sold on it, and that's fine. This one wasn't for me. I was mentally moving on, and people who are enjoying it enjoy it. But then when I heard Din shows up, I'm like, all right, so now I have to see it for Mando season 3 whenever that comes out. So I watched it. So I don't know. Star Wars, we love you, but please, course correct.
This just goes to show that we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours and days. But that brings me to one last thing that I wanted to touch on, and it's just a simple thing that Star Wars has so much potential, arguably more potential than any of these other huge franchises that make multi-million-dollar projects. And that is that like you can have so many original stories told through Disney Plus, through theatrical releases, and they're not doing it. Like you
Yeah.
talked about The Mandalorian season 1 and how amazing that was because we got a brand new character, brand new characters, plural, and
Yeah.
an original story, something that like isn't inherently tied to the original trilogy or the prequel or the sequel trilogy. And, I think that there was at the time, a very large opinion and fan base that said, okay, we want more of this, like more
Yeah.
original content. And then all of a sudden, like almost overnight in season 2 of The Mandalorian, when we first got Bo-Katan, then it started the whispers of, okay, well, maybe Star Wars should be like this. Like maybe we should
Yeah.
just have these characters coming back and we'll slot them into The Mandalorian, and they just did it with the Book of Boba Fett, where not only did they have the titular character take a back seat in the second half
Yeah.
of his own show, they brought in the Mandalorian and that whole crew. And now, like Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan, they're all associated not only with their original stories, but now with the Mandalorian. So there's going to be this expectation going forward in season 3 of like, where's the cameos? When are people going to show up?
Where's Tatooine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I feel like shows like The Mandalorian season 3 and Kenobi and Andor, they're all in trouble because if they don't have these huge cameo moments, characters coming out of the shadows and out of the desert and out from corridors and onto ships, people aren't going to like it, And I don't, that's just how it feels to me.
Meanwhile, Star Wars Visions came out last year and was one of the most fun Star Wars things
and
to
no
happen
one talks
in
about
years.
it.
Yeah.
No one talks
Visions
about
was
it.
so
And it's
good.
a shame. It's a shame because like just the creativity put into Visions where like they told the anime studios, you can do whatever time period you want. It doesn't have, like this isn't canon, just have fun with it.
Yeah.
And
I
Tatooine
would
Rhapsody-
rather watch a full series about any one of the Visions episodes before I watch Book of Boba Fett season 2. Like 100%.
And it's like, listen, if you enjoy what Star Wars is doing right now, I'm glad it's working for you. But the three of us just have a very different stance on where we're at with Star Wars. And I mean, we went to college together while the sequel trilogy was coming out. And I remember talking to both of you about Last Jedi when it came out and then Rise of Skywalker. I mean, when Rise of Skywalker came out, we did the Star Wars retrospectives leading up to it.
Yeah.
So like, I adore this franchise and I will support it.
Ago now.
It really was. I mean, yeah, but I think the biggest thing to remember is that Star Wars is for everyone. And what they're doing right now is not for everyone. It is catered to a very specific group and it's not a welcoming show. I would not tell my mom to watch Book of Boba Fett because it's a good story. My mom would not get it. She'd be like, didn't he die in episode 5? I'm like, yes, good job, Mom. Good observing skills. Or episode 6, sorry. Now I'm going to get screamed at by Star Wars fans because I don't know Star Wars. But I think that Star Wars just has limitless potential and they should not do what the MCU is doing, just like how the DCEU should not be doing what MCU is doing. The MCU is a formula that works because of what they built and how they're going forward. DC just tried to jump the gun and get there, like skip the first 10 years, and it didn't work. And Star Wars, we shouldn't be just being like, hey, this person showed up in one episode, here's your own show. I think it'd be way more powerful if we got like one Star Wars movie every like 5 years and like 1 or 2 shows in that same stretch of just like every once in a while, here's some new content, but then they wouldn't be making billions of dollars. So they probably will never do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that that's the reason that Force Awakens was so successful, because there was such a gap and like it was a breath of fresh air. And I think that that's the way for Star Wars to really thrive. And like real final thoughts this time, like the fact of the matter is, if you think that you're in the majority of the fan base because, you love these cameos and stuff, that's cool. But like, no matter how you feel about the sequels, they were mega successful. All of them made over $1 billion. Tons of people, far more people have seen those films than have seen the Book of Boba Fett or the Mandalorian. Okay. Far more people. So that's just numbers. That's just factual. I'm not saying that everybody liked them, of course. I'm just saying like they were gigantic successes. They're still by far the most successful thing that Disney has done with Star Wars. So, there's a huge portion that is looking for something different out of Star Wars that they're just not getting. But because they're not throwing a temper tantrum online, it's becoming like voiceless, like that dissent, because they just, they got what they liked out of it, but then now Star Wars is catering to other people. So they're just like not even bothering. And, I'll just never understand, like, everybody wants all these Legends characters. And it's like, okay, well, we introduce Cobb Vanth and Chrysanthemum, and like, why don't we just do more with them? Like, they were cooler to see than Luke to me, because they actually did something with them. And when you have characters like that aren't exactly well known, you can kind of do your own thing with them. Like, that's part of the reason the MCU has been so successful. They take characters like Guardians of the Galaxy, where there's not this intense emotional attachment to, and they're like, okay, well, we can change him to make him more like this, and like Star-Lord can have a bit of a different backstory. We don't need him to be from Prince Jason. Like, let's have him be Ego's kid. Like, they can kind of rewrite their own canon because they're not dealing with these highly charged emotions. So I would much rather see stuff like that. And like, all the people that complain about the sequel trilogy are like, oh man, I wish Finn was a Jedi and Rey was training him. That should have been the end of episode 9. It's like, okay, I disagree, but at least give me that. Like, can I please see Rey again before I die? Like, she's my favorite Star Wars character, and I don't get anything from that. Like, we're just going to abandon characters that had so much love and like care put into them by everybody crafting them. Like, go on Etsy and look for sequel trilogy stuff. People care about these characters. So yeah, it's really a bummer, and I hope it changes soon, because I watched Book of Boba Fett pretty much specifically because I knew we were going to talk about this. I probably wouldn't have watched, based on what I had seen from episode 1 and what I had heard from other people, if we weren't talking about this. But I don't ever want to bash something that I haven't actually seen. So I wanted to make sure that I watched it so I could be specific in the things that I talked about, because you never know, maybe you'll end up actually liking something when you watch it. But it's going to get to a point where, like, if this is the direction we're going, as much as I love Star Wars, and believe me, I love Star Wars, I'm going to hop off at some point, because I can't keep wasting, like, I can't waste another 7 hours of my life on something that's being made to cater to adult children that like aren't willing to let media challenge them. Like, I can't dedicate that kind of time to stuff like this anymore. So, I hope it changes for the better soon, or at the very least, like I said, they start making stuff for everybody if they want to make all these projects, so that I can pick and choose what I want to watch.
And meanwhile, as this show is airing, Peacemaker has been airing on HBO Max, about an extremely unknown character, just like you were saying, Flynn. And it is such a compelling story written by James Gunn about such an interesting character, and John Cena is killing it. I would much rather spend the time I've spent on Peacemaker and telling other people you should watch Peacemaker than telling them to watch Book of Boba Fett. And at the end of the day, I love Star Wars. I'm going to give it a chance, but franchises change. And like you said, Flynn, there may be a point in time where it's like, all right, this might not be the one for me anymore. I'm still going to adore it. And like, it'll be important. I mean, like, I'm practically named after Luke Skywalker. Thank you, Dad. But like, at the end of the day, it might just not be for us anymore. And that's a reality we have to be ready for.
All right. My real last thing.
This is our third closing thought.
This is just one quick thing. I think that you could have made the basic main plot line of this story with the Pike Syndicate. I think that you could have made it about Marshall Cobb Vanth and Mos Pelga / Freetown, and it would have been 100 times better. Because no offense to Tamora Morrison, but Timothy Oliphant could actually carry a show.
Yeah.
My actual last thing.
Santa Clarita Diet.
My actual last thing. Like,
dude,
that,
we could have had Cad Bane be like the main villain.
During that beginning of that episode, like when Marshall Cobb Vanth has his showdown with the Pike Syndicate and he kicks the spice to the ground, I'm like, why have I not been watching this guy for 7 hours? Wars. Like, come on. So that's my only thing. I think that it could have been minimal changes, and you could have had that exact same main storyline. It would have been so much better. But I'm done.
I'd say let's wrap this up, Gianni.
Yeah. All right. So those are our thoughts and our issues and our grievances and problems with the current state of Star Wars. Hopefully it gets better, because at the end of the day, we are fans. We want it to be amazing. We want to go in and love it, but we don't right now. So with that, we will probably be talking about Star Wars again when Kenobi comes out, if not before that.
Fingers crossed, it's good.
We will catch you in the next one.